Okay, our next speaker is David Snyder. His topic is an unexpected journey, and David will describe his unusual career journey that led to the cybersecurity work he is doing today. For those early in their career, it will demonstrate how things that you never expected or planned for can take you in new directions. For those later in their work life, it will show that with a commitment to continually learning new things, you can pivot to a new path when the world changes around you. David graduated with a Bachelor's of Science in Civil Engineering and Public Policy, obtained an MBA in Technology Management, and later became a Certified Information Systems Security Professional and Certified Cloud Security Professional. David is a member of ISSA and is the Secretary of the Consultants Network of Silicon Valley IEEE Affiliate Chapter. Welcome, David. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for the introduction. Good to see some familiar faces and also some new ones. Hope you find this interesting. So yes, healthcare. Let me tell you how I started out in my work life. And if you had asked me back then, I would not have expected to be working this closely with computer systems. Going back then, computers were, room-sized operations, and I learned how to use punch cards and stuff, but I was never very proficient with it at the time. So let's see if we can get this going. I'll talk about this in terms of this journey from then till now, and especially some of the more recent things I've been doing on remote patient monitoring. So I did work in hospitals it started in my high school days and in early college. I was taking care of patients actually in intensive care units, doing what we call blood gas analyses with some lab instrumentation, working with the ventilators, which you hear so much about now with people who've got a bad case of COVID. I can't imagine working in that environment now. It's got to be intense. But I got interested in other things. I had originally gone to college at a liberal arts school, wasn't sure what I wanted to do, but there was the environmental movement that attracted me, and I found out about this engineering program at Carnegie Mellon. So I started school over again, started college over again, got the engineering degree, started working in environmental engineering, did that for about 20 years, was a registered, or still am a registered professional engineer in California. But that was a lot of work around industry. And, partway along the line, personal computers came out, and I picked up a compact, luggable dual floppy, and I put a small 10 megabyte hard drive in the expansion slot, if you can imagine. And of course had a modem. And I got interested in online stuff and actually started teaching some of my colleagues how to look up technical information online. Well, a friend of mine was working in e-commerce, and he knew back in 1997 that I had some familiarity with the internet. And he said, why don't you come over, work on e-commerce. We'll teach you what you need to know, but you can bring your internet knowledge. And that led to, pretty long career in e-commerce. And along the way, I went back and got an MBA. And working with credit cards, as you can imagine, so extensively, just drew me into cybersecurity. When PCI compliance came out, and I was involved in that from early on, and that had me working very closely with the developers and network engineers. The more I did that, the more I got involved. And at a certain point, I just said, well, I started going to some of the ISSA local brush-up classes to prepare for the CISSP. It's a really neat thing from the chapters here in Silicon Valley and San Francisco, that instead of thousands of dollars for a boot camp, this was much more reasonable. And then with some of the online tools and the books and so forth, and all the experience I had, I was able to pick up the credentials. I got the CISSP about 6-7 years ago, 6 years, I think, and the CISSP just earlier this year. So I kind of maintain an interest in healthcare. I ran a special interest group here in the Valley from 2010 to about 2016 or 17 on health technology. And it really kept me in touch with a bunch of people in this industry. And in fact, I'm consulting today for a startup that has got some technology that they're going to get FDA approval for. So here I am doing cybersecurity for medical devices. And in remote patient monitoring, I'm going to go through and talk a little bit about some of these you'll be familiar with. Some might be a surprise. This is a temperature monitor, goes in, one of the ones that goes in the ear, but it's Bluetooth connected. They don't have to be, but you can use it that way. If in these particular style ones. Weight scales. Weight is very important for someone managing congestive heart failure, because if you start retaining fluid, your weight's going to go up, and you really want to talk to your physician about that, because you may need to change your medications. Blood pressure, similarly, smartphone enabled. This is a pulse oximeter. I've got one here at home that is Bluetooth enabled. This is an implantable cardiac device. There are both pacemakers and defibrillators. I think this is one of the smaller ones. And they often come with an external monitoring device that you hold up to your chest. And then this records information to be sent over the wire to the physician. Smartwatches have become a big thing. This is a picture of a combination of a oximeter, so that instead of having to do a finger stick all the time, there's a continuous sensor. And then there are insulin pumps that can be attached. And this then becomes what you would call an artificial pancreas. It's injecting just enough insulin when the glucometer says that you need it. This is a picture of a nerve stimulator for counteracting pain. I don't know if you've heard about sleep apnea, but this is what's called a continuous positive airway pressure machine. Person sleeping will wear a breathing mask to keep pressure on so that their airway does not collapse and get blocked. And these devices now come with a cell chip in them, so that every morning you can download to your smartphone what's been going on, how many hours it was used, and some data about the pressures. And then there are even these multi devices. This one here, I don't know if you can see my cursor. This is a little microphone device for stethoscope. This next one to the side here is for looking in the ear and getting a little visual that can actually take a picture and send it. The next one to the right is actually it's a little tongue depressor to be able to take a picture looking in the throat. So those things that you often have happen when you make a doctor's visit can be done at home. These are not widely used yet, but with COVID, there's been a lot of interest in what's called telehealth and remote patient monitoring devices. And with an aging population, a lot of people are going to be living longer and wanting to stay in their homes and wanting to avoid traveling a long distance to go to the doctor's office to be monitored for things that can be monitored at home. So let's think about this from a cybersecurity perspective. On the left, you may have these devices at home, or maybe an assisted living facility, maybe operated by the patient or by a home health aide. And there are different ways they connect. Some go directly to the smartphone over Bluetooth. Sometimes there's a hub at the home. Sometimes they leverage the home Wi-Fi. And some of them even have, as I've mentioned before, a cellular chip, and they can go directly out. Anyhow, they're all going out on the internet, and it's becoming much more common now to have some intermediary, a cloud platform, a platform provider that aggregates the data, formats it into some sort of a dashboard that can be more readily consumed by the clinicians. And so you'll occasionally have a large healthcare organization like a Mayo Clinic or a Cleveland Clinic that may directly receive this information into their systems. But more often today, there'll be a cloud platform out there. And we're going to talk more about the security around these things, because this is the end-to-end trip for that data. And as you can imagine, there are opportunities for vulnerabilities to exist. So I've got a simplified picture here, and I envision that at home or in a remote location, the patient is there, possibly with a home health aide or a visiting nurse, and you've got the device which is connecting somehow to the internet through a home network, smartphone, over the air, to an ISP, onto the cloud platform, and eventually to the clinicians at the healthcare delivery organization. And there's going to be somebody who's responsible for security at the cloud platform, and you'll have clinical engineers and IT people at the healthcare delivery organization. And more, there's attention being given to, well, what about the manufacturers? They are responsible to make sure their devices are secure. And as we've all learned with SolarWinds and in other instances, there are supply chain concerns that have to be thought about. So I think of this as a system of systems. And what concerns me, and I think there's some progress being made in this, but really I think there's opportunity for much more to be done, is for some collaboration across these organizational boundaries. Up till now, a lot of this has been done as silos. You just hope that the guy on the other end of the wire is doing as good a job, and you're not going to be susceptible to the kind of thing that happened to Target in 2013, was it? When one of their vendors, a heating, ventilating, and air conditioning vendor, was compromised, and because they had connections into Target, credit cards were compromised. Let's look at this picture a little differently now. When you've got the manufacturer of the device and all of the supply chain and distributor and all of the people involved over there, they're regulated by the Food and Drug Administration. But when you think about the other things that are going on, the FDA and others are referring to various standards, and there's security researchers trying to help out and pinpoint the vulnerabilities and do, what do we call it, vulnerability disclosures in a safe way. But the focus of the FDA is on the device, and that's established by statute and regulation. That's their responsibility, and we'll talk more about their vision about this in a few slides. But the Federal Communications Commission is responsible for a lot about smartphones and carriers and ISPs. And then you've got Health and Human Services regulating healthcare delivery organizations and home health providers. I think everyone knows about the HIPAA regulations pertaining to privacy and security. Well, before I go on, let me stop and ask, are there any questions, anything of this that's I didn't explain properly?
No, everything's relatively clear. Thank you.
Okay. So I like to suggest that we need to look at this in a collaborative and comprehensive way. I'm not really good at down in the weeds security. I don't have a developer background. I'm not a network engineer, but I like to look at the big picture. And I really think there's an opportunity for more collaboration and coordination among these different organizations in the ecosystem. So collaboration is the watchword I recommend. And I really think it's the healthcare delivery organizations that are in the best position to be in the driver's seat to provide leadership on this. The trouble is that they're often spread pretty thin and may not have the resources to do all that coordination. But maybe the only way it's going to happen is, instead of it just being a suggestion or a recommendation, maybe it will become a requirement. And this is the slide I was going to mention that says the FDA is advising that there is a shared responsibility among these stakeholders, and they encourage collaboration, but they haven't taken the step, and maybe they don't feel they have the regulatory authority to require it. So that's where we are, the state of the industry today. And if you look at the NIST framework, there's a whole bunch of talk about supply chain security. There should be a risk management process. These suppliers, which are the medical device manufacturers and the cloud platforms, are the third-party partners. They should be assessed. And the contracts should include something about cybersecurity. And under HIPAA, they talk about business associate agreements that are supposed to address cybersecurity. And then there's the idea that this should routinely be reviewed, doing annual audits, and then that everybody have incident response and disaster recovery in mind. But I have a dashed line here saying there's really no talk about the day-to-day and month-to-month and so on collaboration to make sure things stay secure. The best that you come up with is an annual audit. So I think there's a little gap here. Anyway, that's pretty much a wrap on what I have. I'll leave this slide up for a minute to let you know that that's my website. And from the homepage, you can probably find your way pretty quick to this PDF I have of a little paper I put together going into a little more depth about some of the ideas I just shared. But I hope you found that interesting or useful. I think for me personally, it's been an interesting journey, one that I never would have expected when I started out. But here I am nearing retirement, knee deep in cybersecurity, actually working with a group on public key infrastructure now, and also, as I said, advising a startup that is getting ready for FDA approval on some technology. It's been interesting, and I would encourage everyone, to keep an open mind and stay interested in things and follow up and keep studying, because you never know where it might lead. And if anybody wants to contact me, these are the subjects I enjoy talking about. That's it.
Thank you, David.